bad boy asked me on a date. You and your best friend Ryujin had just finished the second class, and now you are walking to the next one. You say, I'm very tired. I want to go home. Miyujin says, did you see Jungkook? You say, no. Why? Ryujin says, he told me to give him the homework. You say, which homework? Yours. Ryujin says, yes. You say, okay. Ryujin says, don't worry, I will not take your crush. She whispered it in your ear. You say, Aish, I do not have a crush on him. Ryujin says, I know, I'm just joking. While you were talking to your best friend, Jungkook came. Jungkook says, did you finish the homework? Ryujin says, yes, here. Hyujin gave him the homework and he took it. Jungkook was known as the bad boy of the school. He was not only a bad boy, he was also a playboy. You had a crush on him for a long time, about 7 months, but you did not want to show him that you liked him. Ryujin was his childhood friend, so they talked often. Jungkook says, hi, baby. He said it and looked at you. You say, yeah, stop calling me baby. Jungkook says, why? You say, because I'm not your girlfriend. Jungkook says, maybe you will be. He winked at you. Ryujin says, what was this girl? You say, he is with everyone like this, and you know that. Ryujin says, no, he is like another person when he is with you. You say, Aish, let's go to the next class. Ryujin says, okay, but I do not want to go. I want to go home and sleep. She said it dramatically. Ryujin says, I miss my boyfriend. You say, what? You have a boyfriend? You looked at her, confused. You say, you have a boyfriend and you did not tell me. Ryujin says, yes. Ryujin says, do you know who it is? You say, who? Ryujin says, my pillow and my bed. She laughed. You say, Aish, this girl. After a while, the teacher came and started the class. Time skip. The bell rang and the class was over. Everyone started to rest and get ready for the next class. You and your best friend were watching funny videos on your phones, but after a while, you heard noise in the hallway. Ryujin says, please do not tell me we have ghosts in school. You say, stop joking, girl, let's go and see. You both came out of the classroom and were amazed at first sight. Everyone was amazed and did not know what was happening. In the hallway, there were hearts and flowers everywhere. On the wall, someone had written, YN I love you, please be my girlfriend. Everyone was shocked because nobody knew who did it. Ryujin says, someone seems to be madly in love with you. You did not say anything because you were shocked. You say, who wrote this? Ryujin says, maybe Jungkook. She winked at you. You say, he would never do this. He is a bad boy and he does whatever he wants. Ryujin says, yeah, you are right, but believe me, he has a crush on you. You say, how are you so sure? Ryujin says, just wait and you will see. Teacher says, what is happening here? Shouldn't you all be in class? You say, let's go, Ryujin. Ryujin says, hey, we have free time. Let's go and watch the basketball match. You say, oh, okay. The boys started playing basketball and the girls cheered for their favorites. While Jungkook was playing basketball, he was looking at you all the time. But you did not notice because you and Ryujin were talking. Ryujin says, oh. You say, what? Ryujin says, look there. She pointed at Jungkook. Ryujin says, Jungkook is staring at you. You looked at him, but he turned his gaze away because he was embarrassed that you caught him. Ryujin says, see, I know he likes you. You say, oh. Before you could finish the sentence, someone started shouting and everyone turned. Jungkook says, if I make this basket, you will come on a date with me after school. Everyone says, oh! He threw the ball and made the basket. Ryujin says, I told you, girl. You say, yeah. Ryujin says, will you go? You say, I don't know. You say, maybe he is just making fun of me. You know he is a playboy. Ryujin says, trust me, okay? You say, okay. Ryujin says, so you will go, right? You say, yeah. Time skip. After school. Everyone finished classes and now everyone was going home. You say, see you tomorrow, girl. You hugged Ryujin and she hugged you back. Ryujin says, see you tomorrow, and look over there. She pointed to Jungkook, who was waiting for you in front of the school on his motorcycle. Ryujin says, bye, girl. You say, bye. You went to him. Jungkook says, hi, baby. You say, can you just stop calling me like that? Jungkook says, no. Catch. He handed you a motorcycle helmet. You took it and put it on. You got on the motorcycle and put your hands on Jungkook's shoulders. Jungkook says, do you think I can drive like this? You say, huh. He took your hands and placed them on his waist. Jungkook says, this is better. He said it and started the engine. After a while, you arrived at a restaurant for dinner. When you entered the restaurant, Jungkook pulled out the chair for you. You were amazed by his behavior because he had never acted like this before. You say, thanks. You smiled at him. Jungkook says, no problem. He said it and sat down in front of you. Jungkook says, what do you want to eat? You say, whatever. Jungkook says, do you want pizza? You say, yes. Jungkook says, okay. He raised his hand and called the waitress. Waitress says, welcome, sir. What will you order? She smiled at him. Jungkook says, we want pizza. Waitress says, okay. And for drinking, do you want something? Jungkook says, I would like Coca-Cola. Waitress says, and you? You say, I just want water. Waitress says, okay. She rolled her eyes and left. Jungkook says, thank you for not rejecting me. He smiled at you. You just smiled and nodded. Hatul, you and Jungkook were talking. The waitress came back and left the food and drinks in front of you. Waitress says, have a good appetite, sir. As you could see, the waitress only paid attention to Jungkook. Because she did not receive any answers, she just left. You say, you will not see what it is? You pointed to the napkin the waitress had given him. He took the napkin and saw what was written on it. He just looked at you and smiled. You say, what? Jungkook says, nothing, nothing. You were curious, so you took the napkin from his hand and read what was written on it. You say, you are so handsome, sir. Can I get your number? When you read that, you were very annoyed. You raised your hand and called the waitress. Waitress says, do you need anything? You say, yes. Explain to me what this is. She just looked at you. You say, okay then, I will solve this. You tore the napkin in front of her and threw it away. You say, please do not flirt with my boyfriend again. She smiled, got up, and took Jungkook by the hand. Then you both went outside. You say, oh, sorry. You let go of his hand. Jungkook says, no, it's okay. Started laughing. You say, why are you laughing? Jungkook says, because I have never seen you like this. Jungkook says, please do not flirt with my boyfriend again. You say, sorry, I do just. Jungkook says, so it means that you accept being my girlfriend? You say, no. Jungkook says, then why did you say that? You say, I do not know, I just said that. Jungkook says, well then, I'm going to go back and give her my number. He started walking, but you grabbed his hand. You say, no, wait. He turned to you. You say, yes, I love you. Jungkook says, I love you too. When you heard that, you were surprised. You say, but I do not believe you. Jungkook says, do you remember today when someone decorated the hallway? You say, yes. Jungkook says, well, that was me. I wanted to come and tell you, but at that moment the teacher came. You say, huh. Jungkook says, yes. And I know you do not believe me because I am a bad boy. Jungkook says, everyone at school thinks I am a playboy, and all the girls go crazy when I talk to them. Jungkook says, but I am serious about you. It is okay if you do not feel the same way. I understand. You say, I love you. Jungkook says, what? You say, yes, I love you. Jungkook says, Really? You say, yes. Jungkook says, so I can call you baby? You say, yes. You smiled at him. Jungkook says, I love you, baby. You say, I love you too. Jungkook says, mm-hmm. Can I get a kiss now? You say, no. He started running. You say, catch me if you can. Jungkook says, yeah, I was waiting for this for 2 years. You say, catch me if you can. Jungkook says, come here, if I catch you, it will be dangerous.